Hello all of you wonderful people, Jules here for Whatculture.com, and I want to start off this video with a clear statement. If you look at nearly any film, you will likely find holes or logic gaps. It's the nature of cinema to cut corners in some areas to condense narratives into enjoyable experiences. And so, when I'm here doing this list on being very anal about film rules, I'm not doing so to wind people up or to say that I hated the film in question. Far from it, in fact. It's meant to be entertaining, but I'm explaining this at the beginning as I'm sure that there are some sorts that might take umbrage with it if I don't. However, I think that these mild critiques come from a pretty credible place, because today we're focusing on films that told us that this is what this does, only for sequels or other scenes in the same movie to completely undo those rules. So let's take these rule breakers to task, shall we? As I'm Jules, this is Whatculture.com, and these are 10 movies that struggle to define their own rules. Number 10, The Future is Not Set. Or is it? Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Though the brilliant Terminator 2 came up with Sarah Connor's amazing line of "no fate but what we make," it's hardly one that's emblematic of the series as a whole. And it all began with the original Terminator movie, which has Kyle Reese reciting the message, "The future is not set," even though John Connor's very conception appears to be ordained by the law of determinism itself. T2 nevertheless concluded with the hopeful implication that the destined apocalyptic future had been averted, only for Terminator 3 to completely reverse that, insisting that Judgment Day was always inevitable, as is reinforced by Terminator Salvation's future war setting. And by the time that Terminator Genisys and Terminator Dark Fate materialized, the franchise had settled into a routine of melding the familiar with the air quotes new, and the fated with the unpredictable. Now, Genisys presented a villainous John Connor while revisiting several classic franchise moments, and Dark Fate killed off Connor only to deliver a thinly veiled rehash of the first two movies. In short, it's a bit messy, and these twists seemed more geared at getting cash than keeping with the internal logic of the films. And the grand irony, of course, is that Dark Fate's commercial failure means that the future of the franchise itself is anything but set. Number 9, Godzilla's constantly changing size. Godzilla 1998. There are so many things to hate about the 1998 Godzilla movie, not least the iconic monster's controversial design, which reimagined it as a sleek, oversized lizard that didn't even have atomic breath. I mean, come on, how can you not have atomic breath? But the big internal inconsistency in the film is its approach to Godzilla's size. In one scene, it creates a lair within a subway tunnel, but later on it can't seem to fit inside the decidedly larger Hyde Park tunnel. And Godzilla's eyes, and especially its toes, are markedly different in size between scenes, suggesting that the director and the special effects team just either didn't care enough or simply didn't think that we'd notice. But you know what? We did! Even the promotional material couldn't keep things in check, which should have been a big warning sign for the film, right? Number 8, what counts as killing someone? Batman Begins. Though the Batman movies have generally played pretty fast and loose with the Caped Crusaders' no-kill policy, the gritty groundedness of Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins suggested a more serious-minded engagement with notions of the superhero taking a life. And yet, despite the movie making it abundantly clear that Batman does not kill, there are two instances where both his action and inaction clearly cause people to die. When Bruce flees the League of Shadows HQ by burning it to the ground, he very clearly leaves unconscious foot soldiers to burn to death or suffocate. And at the end of the film, he opts not to save Ra's al Ghul from the very accident that he instigated, which, no matter how cool it was, still doesn't absolve him of creating the circumstances for the villain's death. There is no denying that these kills didn't help the greater good, but at the same time hiding behind this rule and saying, nah, that one doesn't count, doesn't seem very heroic to us. Number 7, who built all the cars? Cars. Now, the Cars franchise may not be ranked amongst Pixar's greatest works, but fans have nevertheless been left curious and baffled by the world within which these stories take place. And by that, I mean they're cars that speak for some reason, which seem designed to cater for humans, but they don't exist anywhere in the film. Even when asked directly, the creators of the series have never provided a concrete answer as to why, nor how such beings even came into existence. Now, there was a rather darkly comedic joke about it provided by Jay Ward, the creative director director for Cars 3, in which he said that the cars became sentient and overthrew humanity, which, in all honesty, is a film we need to see. However, the official line is, try not to get too hung up on the surreal nuts and bolts of it, which is basically code for stop bothering us. Number 6. The strength of Captain America's shield. Captain America Civil War. It's fair to say that overthinking anything in the world of superheroes is pretty much a fool's errand, particularly as it pertains to the consistency of power levels and so on. But in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there has been one especially contradictory element, and that is the strength of Captain America's vibranium shield. Now, this comes to a major head in Captain America's Civil War, where we witness Cap using his shield to disable human adversaries without causing any lasting damage, only then to use it to smash through a wall later on. Now, the obvious retort that fans will probably have is that you shouldn't focus too much thought on things like this, or at least just accept that Cap is skilled enough a soldier to deploy his shield with exactly the force it needs for a given situation. But, considering that we saw Cap literally slicing through aliens with his shield in the Avengers, it doesn't quite track that those he fought against in Civil War would still be left in one piece. There'd be limbs all over the place at the rate that he was going. They even make fun of this with Spidey's line of, that thing doesn't obey the laws of physics at all, which is pretty much the writers playfully explaining that defining the shield's power level is truly a headache. Number 5. Physics versus the human body. Fast and Furious 6. Though the Fast and Furious series started out as a modest-ish racing franchise, by the time the fourth movie came around, the vehicular shenanigans began to veer towards the insane, and now, in its current form, it's like watching a live-action cartoon. And while this is indeed very enjoyable, the series clearly has no idea or care for the impact of these stunts on the human body. One example from many that spring to mind is in Fast and Furious 6, in which Dom launches himself through the air to save Letty from a fatal fall, and their landing pad, it's the windshield of a car, which, given the velocity that they were both being catapulted at, would most likely certainly have killed both of them. But of course, the pair hilariously walk away mere moments later with nothing more than a scuffed pant leg. I mean, this series doesn't take itself seriously, but it's this franchise's jumping the shark moment, if ever there was one. Number 4. Time travel logic. The butterfly effect. Now, time travel is one of the toughest concepts to write in all of fiction, if only because it opens a litany of plot holes inherent in the nature of time travel itself. It's why so many time travel films instill their logical rules from the off so that the audience can then ease into the guffins without too much issue. And then there's the butterfly effect, film which from its title onwards is clearly interested in the nature of causality, of how a minor event in one's life can redefine the rest of it, but ultimately it ends up tripping over its own non-logic. When protagonist Evan ends up in prison, he attempts to convince his cellmate of his time-traveling abilities by revisiting his childhood and injuring his hands, causing stigmata-like wounds to appear before his cellmate's eyes. Except, of course, the movie's laws of time travel would indicate that the scars would have been present on his hands the entire time, rather than just instantaneously appearing when the movie needed them to, meaning that the cellmate would have probably just been like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I can see that you've got scars. Nice one, mate." Plus, the act of stabbing one's hands would most definitely have a huge impact on your life, at least in the short term, and probably might have stopped Evan from even going to jail in the first place. Now, it was a cool moment, but by taking a step back, it's a pretty dumb one as well. Number 3. Everything about Palpatine. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. Where the hell to begin with the most recent Star Wars movie? I mean, as amusing as Emperor Palpatine's resurrection was in the movie, it really only further sought to muddy the nature of death and the Force in the Star Wars universe. Abrams and company clearly knew that they were playing with fire here, which is likely why the particulars of Palpatine's revival were kept shockingly vague, to say nothing of his wildly inconsistent power set throughout the movie. And the fact that he claims to embody the spirit of every Sith who has ever lived? I'm sorry, what, mate? You know what, I'm not even going to touch that with a stick right now. I'm focusing on something else. The issue here is that he's such a beloved villain, so to give him such an ill-defined comeback and power set makes it feel like he was written by that kid on the playground who always yelled force field when you were playing games. And it's likely this will unfortunately be the last time that we'll see of Palp, so it's a bit of a soggy send-off. Number 2. Not feeding Gizmo after midnight. Gremlins. As wonderful as the Gremlins movies are, they're also built on the foundations of a somewhat flawed premise, or rather, one particular rule that doesn't really make much sense. Now, we're told early on in the film that the adorable Mogwai Gizmo mustn't be allowed to get wet, be exposed to sunlight, or be fed after midnight, lest disaster occur. Except, of course, that third rule is rather open to a fair degree of interpretation. For starters, when does the after midnight period end? And then there's the often cited hypothetical of taking Gizmo on a flight across time zones. Now, Joe Dante and company could have saved themselves a huge headache by simply saying that Gizmo couldn't be fed between sunset and sunrise. However, I'm not going to rag on this series too much because it is so incredibly lovable, it is hard to ever be annoyed with it. Kinda like me, right? Yeah, right. And number 1, the science of shrinking, Ant-Man. Much like the wavering strength of Captain America's shield, trying to make sense of Ant-Man's shrinking and embiggening is a rather thankless task. The first movie explains that the Pym particles shrink a person down while still retaining their mass and strength, as supported by numerous sequences in the film where Ant-Man's mass is very clearly that of a full-size person, namely his ability to still punch humans with considerable force whilst still being tiny. Yet there are also numerous sequences where Ant-Man is traversing surfaces which could not support the weight of a full-grown man, not to mention riding on the back of an ant which would surely be immediately crushed under his mass. And that's not to ignore the smaller objects that are then enlarged throughout the film. I mean, if the Thomas the Tank Engine toy retains its diminutive mass when enlarged, it shouldn't have been possible to just smash through the side of a house and crush a police car, right? However, once more, I enjoyed these films way too much for this to ever be a real problem. So good day to you all.